StorageCraft has a new SMB continuity solution. The Dell non-partner partner program. Tech Data is not a distributor. Who owns who in managed services and more. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 112. An elephant named Gertrude. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 112. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine audio program for you. And who do I mean by you? The VARs, the MSPs, the IT integrators, the resellers, the fine folks who walk into businesses of all kinds and stripes and make it all technological. I think that's a pretty good way of saying it, but I don't know if it is or not, but someone else on the line here might agree or disagree. He is Captain Serious himself, the wonderful, the world traveler, the man who makes sport jackets and denim jeans look like high-class fashion, executive editor Rich Freeman.
Well, thank you, sir. I agree with everything you just said in terms of who our audience is. The only thing I would add is the businesses they're walking into to tech up are small and mid-sized businesses, and system builders are among them as well.
That's true. I did not define the size of said businesses, but frankly, Rich, a lot of what we talk about here, I mean, it's focused on SMB, but a lot of it could also be good for any reseller of any size business.
It's true.
So I mean, even if you're working with 5,000 seat companies, you'll learn a little bit of something here, guaranteed. But I will admit they are not our primary audience, but we're glad to have them for this show where you get educated and entertained all at the same time.
All are welcome.
All are welcome. Yes. So it's been a week since our last show. We had a lot that we were trying to get through there, and we are probably going to have a shorter show today. There hasn't been a whole lot of news, and there hasn't been a whole lot of excitement. Why has it been such a slow week, Rich?
It's kind of a slow time of year. If you look at the event calendar, for example. There's stuff going on. The Microsoft Partner Conference just happened. CompTIA ChannelCon is coming up, but it's a quieter time of year in terms of events. People are on vacation, so the news cycle does feel like it's slowed down a little bit this time of year.
Yeah, and speaking of vacation, I believe there's someone on this particular show who is going on vacation next week, and I'll give everyone a hint. It's not me.
That's right. Two thumbs and... looks like me. Actually, I blew that joke. But yeah, no, it's me. I'm going on vacation.
Yeah. So you're tell everybody about this vacation, because you did it last year and the year before. You've done this for a long time, and it sounds like it's just a ball and a great regular recurring thing for you.
That is exactly right. This is a sort of milestone on my calendar every year, right about end of July, beginning of August, and has been, I mean, it's got to be decades now. So starting like a few years after I graduated from college, I began getting together with some college friends of mine around that time frame, July and August, and we would go out somewhere together. And I mean, they live in different cities and all over, but we would get together and spend a week, maybe sometimes just a weekend together. Over time, it's just kind of grown and grown and grown. People have gotten married, they've had kids, they've brought friends along. The friends have become part of the circle. So now every year, and we've been doing it for a number of years in Northern California, in the Russian River Valley, wine country. And that's where I'm going again next week. But I mean, people will sort of come and I'm there for the whole week. Some people are there for part of it. And so the number of people present is different every day. But I think at our peak, there's something like 25 of us there. And we're just hanging out on the Russian River and drinking more wine than is good for us, and cooking and eating lots of great food and hanging out. It's a really, really good time. I look forward to it every year.
That is awesome. And to our wonderful viewers who are watching this show, you finally got to see Rich. Apparently I had the camera locked on me there for a good chunk. So I hope it was really fascinating listening or watching me intently listen to the things that Rich was saying. So that's fixed now. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, always fun here on the live streams. But yeah, so that sounds great. And I've asked you to have many glasses of wine for me while you're on vacation, because I will not be on vacation. I will be here doing the normal thing with the fam and doing the work week stuff. So with that said, we're not going to have a show next week, so we'll tell everybody that in advance, and we'll mention again here at the end of the show. But there's not going to be a show next week. One, because Rich is going to be on vacation, and two, because the way we kind of settled into doing this live stream for the show, YouTube is ripping the Hangouts tool away from everybody August 1st. So we're going to take a week, and I'm going to try out their replacement solution and just kind of make sure that we're good to go. So we'll be back in a couple weeks, hopefully, and we'll do that. So, any other interesting things? You're home this week, right?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so you're not even on the road. I see you got your little iguana with you.
I do.
Do you take him on the road with you, or does he stay at home on the bookshelf?
He stays home.
Okay. Yeah, he's kind of big to haul around.
He is, yeah. I'm just not the road warrior type. I think he's happy on top of the bookcase.
Good. All right. Well, why don't we just go ahead, and unless you got anything else you want to talk about before we get going, let's dive into the little news that we have.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. So StorageCraft is in the news today. They have unveiled. Unveiled is like a something you get at a restaurant, right? Unveiled.
Right. The veal cut without the veal, basically.
Right. So it's just the plate, I guess. Yeah. They have one of those. And they also have a simple business continuity solution for small business. Now, this is interesting, Rich, because when you think business continuity, you almost exclusively think Datto. And I know StorageCraft has been dabbling in this space for a while, but what is their new simple solution, SMB focused?
Yeah, so there are actually two different ways in which this story is significant, and you just touched on one of them, one of the big ones. So first off, it's just a new product from StorageCraft and worth checking out, and it's called the OneSafe Solo 300, and we'll just gloss right over the fact they've got one in the name, Matt. We don't need to fixate on that, but it's called the OneSafe Solo 300. It is an appliance-based solution. Very small appliance, 4.5 inches square, 2 inches high. You put that on site with the customer. It is continually replicating data directly into the StorageCraft cloud, and it can virtualize into that cloud as well if there's a system failure. There is no onboard storage that actually comes with the appliance for virtualizing on site, but there is a drive bay. So if you want to plug a 2.5-inch drive into the unit or connect external storage via the USB port, you can do that and you can virtualize on site. But the basic model is replicate everything to the cloud, virtualize into the cloud, recover from there. So interesting solution in and of itself. It is 100% fee-based, recurring fee-based in terms of the pricing. A lot of these solutions where there's an appliance involved, you buy the appliance and then you also pay a subscription fee. There is no appliance fee in this solution. The pricing starts, I believe, at $100 per endpoint a month. Let me see where I had that in here because I want to get that number right. Yeah, $100 per endpoint per month. That includes the hardware. They're a little bit unclear. I asked them, so for that subscription fee, how often do you guys refresh the hardware? And quite honestly, I don't think they figured it out yet. They're figuring that this device that they're rolling out coming up in October, the solution officially launches in October, although they unveil it this week. That device is going to be brand new when it comes out in October, and they're assuming it's going to be good for 2-3 years, and they'll kind of figure out what to do when it's time to replace it with the next generation. But this is the very first appliance-based business continuity solution from StorageCraft. And so the other thing, the second way in which the story is significant, is just that from my point of view, it sort of rounds out, it kind of completes a story that they have been involved in really since the very beginning of 2016. January 2016, a company called TA Associates, a private equity firm, makes a $187 million investment in that company. And, they've been adding products and upgrading products and rounding out the portfolio ever since. And this feels, I think, from their perspective and from mine, like the last kind of big missing piece, an appliance-based business continuity solution with their own hardware. And it is their hardware because they went out a couple years back and bought a company called Exablocks, which makes these devices that are.
I remember that company. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the heart of the OneSafe product line. So they've kind of rounded out the product family at this point.
So every time you say the word OneSafe, I want to bang my head against the desk. Shame. I'm going to wag my finger at StorageCraft for naming it one something. The second worst thing you can name a product and quickly becoming the first worst. It used to be all that I stuff. Everything was like I everything. Yeah. Well, now it's one. And like one, I think might actually be worse to me now. I is still nails on a chalkboard. One is like, it's like when you take the silverware and you like scrape it across the plate. That's what it sounds like to me. So boo on that. But the device looks nice. I will say that it looks nice. Now, clarify the pricing for me a little bit because I'm not overly familiar with the pricing for this kind of stuff. With an SMB focused product, $100 per endpoint. So that tells me for every endpoint that connects to this thing is $100 a month, or the thing is $100 a month.
Oh, a good point. I believe it's everything that connects to this thing as opposed to this thing, but I could be wrong.
Because that's how I would read it. Endpoint. So for every endpoint, it backs up $100 a month. Now, is that competitive in this space? That seems a little high to me, but I could be wrong.
Or it could be that endpoint really does mean the device, the appliance rather, as opposed to the endpoints. From their perspective, one of the selling points for this solution that they emphasize when you're talking with them about it is that it is, aggressively priced. The price point is appropriate to smaller businesses. And the other thing I didn't say about the solution that's important is this is it's designed to be a easy to install, easy to run kind of system for smaller environments. One of these appliances will support up to about 20 servers. So they're looking at that 1 to 20 server environment marketplace, and they have priced it appropriately, reasonably from their perspective for that smaller space. So it may be $100 an appliance versus $100, per piece.
I could see a monthly fee per endpoint per like every server you put on there, but I just didn't know if the pricing was good or bad. I can't relate that well in my head, but I guess, if you have 5 servers, you're talking $500 a month, assuming it's endpoint.
Right.
So that's, but if your servers go down or are lost, it's going to cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So I guess it's probably reasonable for what you're doing. So from a business continuity perspective, I would think, I don't know. So, but it's cool. So, do you think that they are going to expand from here in business continuity? They're starting small, SMB. Are they going to go into more of the medium, the larger medium, go after Datto's core area?
They have already suggested that kind of a thing is in the works, and I don't know very much about the product, but so this is the OneSafe Solo 300. There's
one safe. Sorry.
It's like I can't control the name that they've attached to the product, but I can control how many times I say it and force you to bang your head into the wall. So I will try to ease off of that a little bit.
No, you're just going to do it more on purpose. I know you.
There is, so if this is the 300, there's apparently a 3000 in the works, and so they are going to be moving up market from there. And one of the things that they really emphasized in my conversation with them, and that they're stressing with partners right now, is that this new solution doesn't just sort of round out the portfolio; it really sort of rounds out the range of partners that they can work with. So that it now goes from MSPs serving small businesses to mid-size and even sort of lower-end enterprise businesses to solution providers who are in some cases serving larger businesses. They're really looking to kind of cover the entire waterfront, both from an end user perspective and a partner perspective. So for that reason alone, it's logical to assume they will be expanding that business continuity story.
And as soon as they have more than one model to pick from, it is no longer the one safe. Just FYI to StorageCraft. I get stuck on fixated on the weird little things, but it is good, and competition is good, and I hope it works out well for them, because I do like StorageCraft. They have a lot of great other products, and I've been following them for a long time, and it's good to see them growing and doing other new things. So very cool.
This is sort of the story in the BDR world. I mean, what came to mind for me, and I mentioned this briefly at the very end of the article, is you look at what Kaseya has done in the last year plus or so, and it's a similar kind of thing. They didn't have an appliance-based offering. They bought Unitrends. They added one. They've added more of a direct-to-cloud kind of offering recently. You know, Datto is always adding different form factors for different segments of the market. So you're seeing a lot of these BDR players try to expand their offerings and accommodate all of the different kinds of requirements, from the most modest to the most significant.
Good. It's good to offer new benefits to your partners, and which is kind of like what Dell's doing, but the opposite, I guess. And Rich, I got to tell you, I am completely baffled by this headline. So I'm just going to read it, and then you can dive in. Dell offers partner-like benefits to non-partner MSPs.
Yeah.
So if you're not a Dell partner, they're going to pretend you're one and give you benefits to... No. This seems like... I can go to Costco and they're going to let me shop there, even though I'm not a member, because really they don't give a crap about my membership. They just want my money. Is that right?
Well, I probably would not go with that analogy.
Not a good analogy. Okay. I can come up with more, Rich. But how about I just have you explain?
I totally understand why that headline is a little bit baffling, because part of why I wrote this article. So what we're referring to here is something from Dell called the Dell Expert Network. And if you attend conferences in the SMB channel kind of space, you've probably seen these guys already. You're going to see them because they're getting more and more visible on the conference circuit these days. But it's a relatively new offering. They really only introduced this very late in 2018. And it fills a gap that when we created ChannelPro 12 years ago, it just was inconceivable. It's hard to imagine there would have been a time when there are technology companies out there, IT providers, channel pros, who are involved in hardware purchasing decisions, but not actually selling the hardware. And that's what's going on today. That's why Dell created the Expert Network. There are a lot of MSPs who really just don't want to be in the hardware business anymore. They don't want to be reselling PCs, laptops, servers. They'll accept, the monthly recurring revenue to manage that stuff, but they pretty much encourage the customers to go off and make their own hardware purchases. But what happens, of course, is the customers come to the IT provider and ask for recommendations. Well, what laptop should I get for my employees? And then these MSPs pick up the phone, they call the sales force at Dell and start asking questions about these devices. And over time, Dell noticed they were getting a lot of calls from MSPs who are not partners, not a part of the partner program. They're just IT providers making calls, doing research on behalf of their end users. And the thought was, if we can make buying from us or making recommendations to their end users, for our products more attractive to them, that could be a helpful thing for them. And it could also drive some business for us, and hence the Dell Expert Network.
All right. So I'm an MSP. I don't want to sell hardware for some strange reason, and I don't want to do hardware as a service, so I'm just leaving money on the table. But okay, let's say I'm that crazy. Of course, I'm going to get a million angry letters from MSPs who don't sell hardware. You are kind of leaving money on the table. I'm just going to say that. But all right, so I got customers. They're coming to me. They're saying, I need a new computer. and I say, okay, I like Dell. And then Dell gives me money because I say I like Dell.
And Dell gives your customer money. So there are a number of different benefits that you get if you join this program. And I will point out quickly, in terms of that weird headline, partner-like benefits to non-partner MSPs, there are only two requirements to join the Dell Expert Network. And one is you've got to be an MSP, and the other is you cannot be a member of the Dell Partner Program. So it's one or the other.
So this is a Dell referral program, is what this is. Right. So as long as I'm not a Dell partner, I can join the referral program. For every customer that I refer who gives Dell money, I get something.
You get 3% cash back. Your customer gets another 3% kind of discount on the hardware. What else do you get here? I know that there's enablement and educational offerings. You get access to a tool called Tech Direct, which allows you to file support tickets and stuff like that without picking up the phone. It's an online interface, much quicker. Apparently, a way to get support for your customers. You get access to financing for hardware purchases through Dell Financial Services.
But that goes to the customer. The customer gets financing, not the MSP.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
But it becomes easier for the customer to buy, and this is the significant part, is that you as the service provider can bundle your services into that sale. So you tell the customer, hey, I like the XPS 13 from Dell, and they decide, okay, we're going to buy some. They can finance that purchase through Dell Financial Services, but you can actually bundle in your implementation and support services, and that one monthly bill that they're paying Dell is paying both for the hardware and for your services. And so that's easier for them. It's easier for you, et cetera. So
I'm going to ask the obvious question. If it's going to go that far to where I can bundle in my services through Dell to put on hardware so the customer pays one thing, why wouldn't I just become a Dell partner?
Maybe over time, some of these guys decide, but again,
wouldn't the margins be higher on the sale? And Dell can do that anyway, right? If I was a Dell partner, I can still refer business to Dell and get, I think, 5%, 6%, something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Again, the people they're targeting don't want to be in the hardware business. So if you do,
right, but I don't necessarily have to be in the hardware business to be a Dell partner, right?
Partner program.
Okay. So if I'm in the Dell partner program, I'm buying the hardware. The customer can't buy the hardware then.
Correct. The order is being placed by your end user if you're in the Dell Expert Network.
Okay. Whereas the other way, the order is being placed through me, and then I'm buying the hardware, and then I'm billing the customer.
Right.
Okay. That doesn't seem like a big deal to me to get more money, but it might be. It might be a big deal. These are the things that I have to wrap my head around, Rich, that it seems like a lot of complication for not a lot of benefit. But no one else does it, right? So are we going to see like Lenovo referral program, or what is the official title to this? The non-Dell partner?
I don't know. I'm not aware of any other program like this from one of the big hardware makers right now. And I don't know if that's because they're just not getting these phone calls or because they haven't sort of figured out yet that they are. I mean, this is all sort of planned by, executed by the Dell SMB sales team. It's like the partner program and partner organization has nothing to do with this. The sales force realized they were getting a lot of calls from MSPs and thought, well, what can we do with that to encourage?
What can we do to encourage MSPs to refer their customers to Dell?
Yeah, right. They're driving business towards us. What can we do to kind of help them be more like an extension of us, our sales force?
Right. As opposed to the MSP just saying, hey, go to Best Buy and buy some crap.
Right.
Not that I'm saying Best Buy sells crap, but I mean, like, instead of saying go to Best Buy, you're saying go directly to Dell.
Yeah.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Or no, do collect $200 because if you refer them, you get $200 or whatever 3%
whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. What could be $200. It could be $2,000 depending on how much hardware. But I still say that being a Dell non-partner Partner, non-partner, partner, non-partner, partner. I can't say that 5 times fast. I still say that if you really are getting your customers who want to buy a lot of hardware and you are not selling it to them, you are still leaving money on the table, even with this, which is still cool. But I wonder how many partners really are going to do that. What do you think? Is this going to be a big thing?
Well, let me dig up this number for you. It's already a bigger thing than they expected it to be. I think I can't remember if it's 3,600 or 3,800 people have already signed up for this just in the 6 months that it's existed. They're thinking they'll be at about 5,500 members by the end of the year. It's actually growing a lot faster than they anticipated. You may be underestimating the number of service providers out there who really dislike reselling hardware, even if there is money in it, but just the hassles involved in that and returning stuff. And through the years, I've run into plenty of people who have basically said, man, if I could just get rid of that part of my business. And it's hard to do because your customers are all using hardware and you want to be their all things technology source. I'm less stunned by the fact that there are thousands of partners out there who kind of like the looks of this model.
So why not leverage a distributor for hardware sales then? And I'm going to ask these questions because I've been to lots of distributor events. I've listened to all of them talk about benefits they offer. Benefits they offer is you can sell hardware. The distributor delivers it, manages it, takes care of everything. Is there more money there than in this Dell thing? Now, I will also say, too, as I think about it, one nice thing about this Dell program is that you could actually be a hardware provider. You could be like a hardware seller, but primarily like a Lenovo partner or an HP partner. And this is a nice way to not have another partnership where if you get those customers that really want Dell stuff, you can still make a little bit of money off of that. Yeah. Which is kind of nice. But if you're more like the eggs in the Lenovo HP basket, then it's kind of nice. But this seems like a prime thing for distribution to fulfill and manage all of the hardware stuff because that's kind of what they do.
But it's still you placing and managing the order.
True. But but not dealing with returns and all that kind of stuff because I'm sure the customer could just return everything right to the distributor, right?
Theoretically, but whether it really works that way, in fact, if you're the person who sold them the laptop, right?
Yeah, but I know I could be a one-man MSP that services customers of all shapes and sizes because distributors have services for everything. Right? They can deploy, they can install, they can, I'm sure, handle returns, right? I guess it's just who puts the order in. And that would be, I guess, the MSP, right?
Yes, in that model you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, MSP. But that's all the hassle, right? And where are we as a society of IT resellers, Rich, if putting in an order is too much hassle?
Or too much responsibility, which is really kind of what this is about. It's like, I'll give you some advice on good hardware to buy. I just don't want to be the person on the line for this decision you're making and acquisition you're making. That's really the audience that Dell is going after. People provide advice, but that's really kind of as involved as they wish to be.
I can see that. All right. Rich, I'm convinced that the world needs more non-partner partner programs. or I will say a glorified referral program.
Right.
But anytime, hey, if you're giving out advice, see now what I want to do is I want to set up my own MSP because people come to me for hardware advice all the time, right? I don't manage the hardware or anything like that, but like people come and be like, hey, Matt, you know a lot about computers, which I do. And I could just send them all to Dell and I can start making 3% on everything they buy.
Yeah.
Rich, I'm going to do this. I am going to do this. What do I have to do? I just have to sign up.
Pretty much, like I said, 2 requirements. You're not in the partner program and you're an MSP. So I don't know how you document that you're an MSP, but I'm sure it's something like, I've got a business license and a website and look at me, I'm an MSP. So
I can identify as an elephant. named Gertrude, I can certainly identify as an MSP. And there we have a show title, Rich, Identify as an Elephant.
Right.
Or an elephant named Gertrude. We have so many possible show titles already. Folks, I will let you go and read these news stories. It's interesting. It's an interesting discussion. I would love maybe one day, Rich, to get a partner, someone who is an MSP who does not like selling hardware, to talk about like a referral program like this and whether or not that is of interest or benefit to them. It'd be an interesting discussion. But,
and I mean, and opinions are going to vary enormously depending on business model and so on. So I mean,
right, which makes for interesting dialogue. That is for sure, because everybody's got varied opinions, and that's what makes it fun, right? If we all thought the same, we would all do the same. But I'm just curious on like the reasons why people don't sell hardware, and if this gives them what they want, and so benefits. And anyway, we've beaten a dead horse here. So, but we're going to put these links to these two news stories up on the show notes page. So if you're listening on our audio podcast, go to the show notes page for episode 112, and you will be able to go here and read and decide for yourself whether or not this is something that you would be interested in as an MSP. If you're already a part of other hardware programs or not, or if you are thinking about getting out of hardware, but you kind of stay in it for the money, but is this enough to kind of pull you away and say, hey, I can still make a little bit on the hardware and shed myself of everything else? That sounds like a winner to me. So maybe this will encourage, Rich, we might be seeing the beginning of a trend. Maybe this is going to be like what breaks, the straw that breaks the camel's back, to have lots of MSPs stop being hardware partners in hardware sales and just do a lot more referral, because they can still make something off of it. And as you said, shed all the responsibility.
I mean, I think that trend is happening. And maybe this kind of a thing, it accelerates it. I mean, the trend in the industry generally is towards as a service everything, which is why the hardware makers are all kind of introducing these hardware as a service, and the distributors are all doing hardware as a service kind of offerings. And I mean, the way some MSPs are dealing with that is just by not selling anything any other way. So that's kind of happening. I do think it'll be interesting. Like I said, this is I'm not aware of a program like this from the other manufacturers. They may be out there and I just don't know about it. But it will, to your point, it'll be interesting to see if Lenovo or HP is intrigued enough by what they see Dell doing to create their own version of that.
Yeah, we'll have to watch. But normally where one goes, the others follow, right? I would say that's generally true. Yeah,
well, it would certainly make sense here. But yeah, well, we'll see.
All right, we will see. Okay, cool. So that wraps up the news for 112. But there is lots more still yet to discuss. For example, this was breaking news to me when I read this, because I've been wrong for a long time now. Yeah, apparently Tech Data is not a distributor.
That's right. That's right.
Even though they've been a distributor for a long, long time, now they're not.
They're not. And Matt is just reading the headline of my story from Monday, I think it was, which reads, Tech Data is not a distributor.
They are an elephant.
No.
They're not an elephant. Darn it.
I wish I could be kind and tell you that's close, but it's not actually close. They are a solutions aggregator. And, regular ChannelPro readers, regular ChannelPro weekly listeners have probably heard that term, that concept come up before. But the inspiration for this particular headline was a conversation I had at Microsoft Inspire, the Microsoft Partner Conference last week, with Joe Quaglia, who is the president for the Americas at Tech Data. And he was really kind of hammering the point home with me that, it's just not correct anymore. It's just not accurate any longer to refer to Tech Data as a distributor. A distributor is a company that warehouses lots of different products, and then you come to them and you order the product and they ship it out to you. They distribute it to you. And that's how that product gets to market. What they are and have been steadily on the road to becoming ever since they made their $2.6 billion acquisition of Avnet Technology Solutions, the solutions unit of Avnet, a different distributor. They are now a solutions aggregator. And what that means is, yes, they're taking the hardware and the software that they've been selling all along, but they're combining that now with services, their own services, your services, and they are assembling these different things into solutions, complete solutions, to solve business needs for the end user. That's a different function that they perform. And it's a really kind of interesting one. They're not the only major distributor that thinks of itself this way these days. Cenex and Ingram Micro are doing this kind of thing as well. And we've spoken before about how in the world of the Internet of Things in particular, how critical that role is, because in a typical good-sized IoT solution, you could have easily a dozen different companies involved, from hardware makers and software makers and gateways and network service providers, et cetera. And so having somebody in the middle of that who knows all those companies, has all those relationships, can kind of help you as a channel pro figure out the right combination for your needs. That's a new function for somebody in the channel to perform, and that's the role that Tech Data in particular is performing right now. And so at one point in the conversation with Joe last week, he said, if you're looking for a story angle, let me give you one. Tech Data is not a distributor. We are a solutions aggregator. And I'm not normally quite so accommodating when somebody tells me what the angle of my story should be, but I actually kind of liked it in this case. And it's a good angle.
It's a good angle.
It's a good habit for me to get into too, because I spoke about this with Joe a little bit. It's difficult when you are writing a story about Tech Data not to refer to them as a distributor. It's like this one-word label you can attach to the company, and everyone in your audience is going to know what you're talking about. If I refer to them as a solutions aggregator now, there are going to be people who are thinking, well, what does that mean? And I have to kind of define it. So I really do need to kind of start switching my terminology, and this is as good a place as any to do it.
So I know Joe. He can be a very convincing person. I've had many conversations with him. At least one I can think. I don't necessarily use the word many, but at least one. I think more than one. Now they are a solutions aggregator. Do they distribute those solutions that they aggregate?
Define distribute.
In other words, if they are aggregating solutions and I can go to them, will they distribute that solution to me if I want to buy it or deploy it?
Well, again, it depends on what you mean by distribute. Now, we were just talking moments ago about how you can outsource pretty much anything you can think of to solution aggregators these days, from implementation to maintenance, optimization, et cetera. If that's distribution, then I guess they're distributing the solutions.
So let us go to the Great Dictionary. Supply goods to stores and other businesses that sell to consumers. I think that one works. If you are going to aggregate a solution, right, you therefore will supply that solution that you have aggregated to stores and other businesses to resell. That seems.
Yeah.
So my argument here is that, I mean, they can call themselves anything they want. They're still a distributor.
I would say, based on that definition you just read, that distribution is a subset, maybe.
It's a part of it, because they do a lot of cloud services and a lot of that kind of stuff, but they're still...
There's way more to a solution than distributing hardware and software. That's the point. Right.
But I mean, they can distribute services also, in a sense. But they have some of their own unique services. They have marketplaces. I mean, I just, it's funny that they want to redefine themselves when I don't think, like, it's like distributor is a dirty word, and I don't think it is. It's just, it's one of the things that, it's one of the primary things that they do. And I'd be hard pressed to say that solutions aggregator makes sense in a full sense, but they do that, and they'll combine, they'll create new solutions, but they still distribute them. So they're still a distributor. That's, and I'm just arguing maybe devil's advocate a little bit, because this is like a silly thing to me. Like, I'm not a baseball player. I am a professional. How do I put this? I'm not a football wide receiver. I am a professional pigskin air grabber provider. One of those kinds of things. That's not a good one.
Yeah. So I don't buy. So this is not just semantics. There's obviously we're spending too much time on a semantic issue here in terms of what label they attach to themselves. But I mean, it is a legitimately different business model than they've had or any of the big guys have had before. And so wanting to call attention to that basically is understandable to me.
Oh, sure. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. But
I wouldn't say they're not a distributor, right? So I think that maybe that angle of the story I find a little misleading. They're still a distributor, but they also distribute, and they do other things on top of that.
Which, yeah. So just distribution is a piece of what they're doing now. So it's a subset of solutions. So
if I play baseball and baseball and basketball, am I still a baseball player?
Well, how would you want to define yourself to other people? Just as a baseball player, or would it make more sense to call yourself a professional athlete because you play multiple sports?
Yeah, but it doesn't. I find the other to be more specific and interesting. I don't know. It is a semantic issue. And one that I'm not prepared to argue. But they can call themselves whatever they want. They can call themselves a barbecue shop. Do you like barbecue, Rich?
I do.
What kind of barbecue do you like?
Well, you name it. I guess there's the whole Carolinas, Texas kind of thing. KC style as well. Yeah. Well, and I'm least familiar. I have the least experience there. So it's all great, but if I'm forced to choose, I tend to lean towards the Texas.
So as long as they could also be Texas is good. That's good barbecue. Yeah. So they can be the barbecue aggregator.
They could be the barbecue aggregator, I suppose.
So if I had a restaurant, here's a good question. If I had a barbecue restaurant, but I had Texas, Kansas City, and Carolina style barbecue, am I still a restaurant or am I a barbecue aggregator?
It depends on the particular dish. Now, I mean, if you're just handing out ribs, then you're a ribs distributor. But if you're combining the ribs with the corn and the cornbread and the potato salad, and that's more of a barbecue solution, you're aggregating a complete barbecue dish. And you would want people to know this about you, that you're not just distributing hot links.
This is one of the most bizarre conversations we've ever had, man. I got to tell you. All right, let's move on for the sake of everyone's sanity. Where's my notes? Rich, you and I are going to go into the barbecue aggregation business.
That sounds tasty.
There sounds like there's money and deliciousness there.
Yeah.
Who would own that business between the two of us, Rich? I don't know. But the bigger question is who owns who in managed services? So I don't know who does own who. Are we not allowed to own whom's? Can whom not own? Whom is not supposed to own whom, right? That's why in basketball teams there's no more owners, right? Because you can't own is bad. You have to.
I don't know. I hadn't heard that. I thought teams still had owners in the NBA.
No, it's now outlawed as a dirty word.
Oh,
you can't own.
What are they called?
I believe they call them governors now.
Oh,
because because you apparently can't own your franchise because it implies you own the players, which nobody really actually thinks that. But that's not the point. But can you own whom's in managed services?
Well, you can certainly, if you are either a managed services vendor or a BR vendor, a security vendor, or if you are a private equity investor who sees big upside potential in the managed services market, you can own companies, vendors that sell stuff to MSPs. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. Now, if you want to know, whom or who owns whom in managed service, I'm probably not the right, these are the situations where I rely on our colleague, Colleen Fry, who's, sense for the rules is infallible as far as I can tell in those areas. So we're just going to go with who owns who in managed services. But and I think we've spoken about this just a little bit on the podcast before when we were talking about the July issue that this originally ran in. And it was inspired by an exchange of emails with Ed Correa, who has been a guest host with us on the podcast before. He is an MSP and a solution provider in California. And he just approached me out of the blue in email one day and basically said, it's gotten impossible, basically, to keep track of all the mergers and acquisitions activity, specifically in the vendor world. In managed services and what private equity firm has bought which company and who owns who now. Could you guys at ChannelPro do an article about this? And in the end, I decided not to do an article, but to pull together sort of a chart, like a diagram that just shows you who has been acquired by who owns who else now. And so that ran as a 2-page spread in the July issue of the magazine. It has now, just within the last few days, appeared on our homepage as well. And that is what I'm looking at right now. What I trust you are looking at as well, Matt.
Yeah, I'm going to, for those who are watching, I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Hopefully they should see that. Yeah, who owns who? Okay, so this is about the firms and companies that own other companies.
Right.
Okay, yeah, which is very confusing, no doubt. So walk us through a little bit of the logic here.
Well, what you're going to see, and I mean, I kind of created the back of the envelope version of this originally before all of this really great layout and organization work was done by our art director, Dave Waugh. But what quickly emerged, just sort of sketching this all out on the back of the envelope, is you begin to see that there are a few pretty big private equity firms that have an outsized presence in the managed services vendor market. And so the one that appears highest on this diagram that we're looking at here is Thoma Bravo. And they earlier this year acquired ConnectWise. They own Barracuda. They owned SolarWinds. They still have a stake in SolarWinds, but they used to own it outright. They own Carver, or excuse me, Continuum. And Carver was acquired by Continuum. So in a manner of speaking, Thoma Bravo owns them as well. But I mean, think about how many pretty big names I just reeled off there that one private equity firm owns outright or in part. ConnectWise, Continuum, SolarWinds, and Barracuda. And that's one private equity investor.
That's a lot.
A lot of money sunk into those companies. And that those investments have in turn allowed all those companies I named to make acquisitions of their own. So with SolarWinds, it was Carver, but it was also BrightGauge. SolarWinds has bought Spam Experts and Passportal very recently. They bought Enable a long time ago. Barracuda once upon a time bought Intronis and turned that today into their Barracuda MSP division. So the private equity money that's coming into the managed services vendor world is enabling a lot of this additional, lower level, if you will, M&A activity. And then you've got
and I'm going to point out one more too, because we talked a lot about how Kaseya has been like on a buying spree.
Yeah. And
this one really showed, like this one is like, you can see how much Kaseya has really acquired. And how TPG and Insight Partners have acquired a big chunk of what used to be a lot of separate but very important tools.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, the way the diagram is set out is you've got, the sort of core company, Kaseya in this case, and then arrows from all the companies they acquired pointing to them. And there are a lot of arrows pointing to Kaseya on this diagram right now, ranging from ID Agent most recently to IT Glue, Unitrends, Spanning, Rapid Fire Tools. A couple of years ago, they bought a company called Unigma that does cloud optimization, spending optimization, resource utilization, et cetera. So yeah, they have been hugely active in the mergers and acquisition space, and they raised. So they were originally acquired by Insight Partners, which is a a private equity firm, but they raised a whole bunch of additional money just within the past few months, and that's what brought TPG into the picture. And Insight Partners is a pretty big private equity firm. TPG is a huge private equity firm, and it further evidence that the managed services space has really grabbed the attention of private equity investors. I have lost your audio.
There we go. Am I back?
You are.
Okay. I think when I was sharing my screen, and sometimes when I share my screen, my mic goes out. Who knows? So I was the really cool story, really good insight, a way to visually see all of this consolidation that's occurred. And this is only just consolidation really within private equity. There's been a whole crap ton of additional consolidation amongst public companies too, with a bunch of large companies, absorbing lots of these other smaller ones. So pretty neat.
Yeah, no, I find it both helpful and just kind of interesting to see it represented graphically. It gives you a sense for the scale of the activity that's going on. And, as we were preparing this online version of the chart that runs in the July issue of the magazine, there was some discussion about, do we need to put a label on this somewhere that makes it clear this is current as of July 2019? And the universal emphatic answer was yes. This will probably be out of date, and it'll almost certainly be out of date by August. There's more coming. This is really just where we're at today.
Yeah, and we talked about this a few shows ago, that we're going to work on the directory on the website and see if we can find a way to reflect a lot of these companies that have bought and absorbed other companies in a historical way. So when you go into our directory and you look at a company, you could see they're owned by blah and they absorbed blah. It'd be a lot of work to go back and do historically, but it'd be worth it. It'd be really cool to see that. It
would be a lot of fun and informative and kind of fun just to sort of click through and watch, okay, so they bought these guys, they were bought by this other company, and then you click through there and, this other company also bought these 5 others. Yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah, we could trace that back going really far. So it just depends on how much work you want to put into it, but that'd be a cool thing, and it's on my list of something to implement online for our wonderful online ChannelPro Network readers who browse our site. And if you don't browse our site, you really should. You should really set it as one of your start pages, particularly if you're an MSP or if you're an integrator, because we've got news stories and articles and great things about not only products and vendors, but about better ways to run your business and advice about hiring and all kind everything that the modern day MSP and VAR an integrator needs to know. So channelpronetwork.com is that website. Make sure you bookmark it, set it as your start page.
And we're all over the socials too. So if you're more about getting your news through Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, you can do that too.
Yep, we're all on those, and we'll tell all those out here at the end of the show. But we're all over the socials. We're everywhere, Rich, everywhere, and we're even live and in person. We haven't talked about our live events in a while, so we should probably, before we go to our next story, say that we are also going to San Jose in, when is that? That is September. Yep, September. We're going to be in San Jose, California. Rich knows the exact date. He can tell you that. And after that, we are going to be in Island, New Jersey. Yep. Yeah, back to Island, New Jersey. We've been to that. So if you've been to that show, same hotel, I believe, too. We've been to that hotel, I think, 3 or 4 times now. Always a great success. Always a great show. So make sure you join us there too. And that is in November, if I remember correctly. Correct.
So the San Jose show is September 5th. And I believe the November show in New Jersey is November 6th. But if you go to events.channelpronetwork.com, you can find out for sure. Yep, you can find out for sure there. You can register. You can also check out some of the online events we've been doing. We've been doing a lot of online summits on various categories like security and managed services and so on and so forth. So those are also great. So if you're not able to go to any of those live shows, you can still learn a lot by doing our online summits.
and taken part of those, and those are available online, so they're available to anybody. You can do those in your pajamas. How often can you do that? Attend a business, a function in your PJs. Actually, that's actually kind of common now these days, really, isn't it? But yeah, but you learn a lot. It's a lot of great stuff. Events.channelpronetwork.com, or if you know our regular website, channelpronetwork.com, just hit the events link up there, and it'll take you there. And poof, you can learn and register for all of this stuff. So Rich, there's some lessons that need to be learned, and not just about going to ChannelPro events, which is very important, and going to the ChannelPro network, but there was a big processor shortage that we're kind of coming out of. I would say we're pretty much past it now for the most part. Maybe. But we've learned a lot from this. So talk about this story. This is a very interesting one.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really interesting too. And I mean, yeah, so what we're referring to here obviously, as I'm guessing the vast majority of folks in our audience knows, there was a real shortage of processors, PC processors, from Intel for a while there. And we actually, you know what, we may have been in our quiet period on the podcast when this happened, but I was at a D&H show in March, I believe it was, and Intel had a speaker there, and he hadn't arrived planning to talk about this, but it was what everybody in the audience, wanted to hear about, and so he kind of spontaneously improvised some content just to help people understand that this Intel processor shortage and where it came from and what they were doing about it. And essentially what happened, in a certain way, it's one of those good problems to have. They underestimated demand, and it's a long production cycle. As they put it, from sand to silicon is about a 6-month process, and they underestimated demand. They didn't have enough chips out there. They acted quickly to increase production, but it takes a while to go from sand to silicon. And so they are, I think, really just starting to emerge in a serious way from that now. And so we went out to a whole bunch of different channel pros and system builders and just asked, how did this impact you? And what maybe are you doing differently now, having had this experience? And we got some interesting answers. And if I was to put them into two really, really big buckets, one would be there are a lot of people out there who are doing more business with AMD than they did before because they just couldn't get parts otherwise. And a lot of those people are planning to continue to do at least some of their business with AMD. So this is the problem for Intel that comes out of this shortage, is it wound up introducing some people to AMD, and it's probably going to have some sort of an effect on how much Intel business they're doing. Maybe not an enormous one, but some. And then the other thing that some people are doing, from a business standpoint, it usually doesn't make a lot of sense to have a big hardware inventory in the back room or something like that, kind of eating up space and capital and so on. But
particularly in technology too. That's just money wasted at that point.
But there are people out there who are like, I'm just never running the risk of being in this boat again. And I had nothing in inventory before, and now I'm always going to have at least some inventory of the really critical parts to make sure I don't find myself with nothing again.
I wouldn't backlog, or I wouldn't store too many processors on hand, because they go obsolete so fast. But I guess even if you're selling an older chip, I guess that's better than selling no chip, or no box where chip goes inside.
Yeah,
good point.
So, people had customers coming to them and saying, I need X new systems. And, the expectation had been set from earlier on that I'm going to get it within, and I'm just making up a number, 2 weeks or whatever. And all of a sudden you've got to tell them, it's going to be more like 6 or 8 this time. And you can explain it's Intel's fault, but it's just an ugly position to be in. So, yeah, I do. I totally agree. There's a huge risk factor with stockpiling processors in particular, but I do understand why people are feeling like I don't want to endure that pain again, so I'll run a little bit of that risk.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Diversifying with AMD, who we're going to talk about a little bit later here in the show. They've been making a big, strong comeback, particularly in desktop and server processors. They've got a lot of really impressive lines out right now. And I know when I was at Accelerate, and I was talking to some of the execs there. Having more lines with more model options with AMD is definitely something that they're looking seriously at doing, and they've been adding more AMD SKUs, if anything, just to prevent from being in a situation where they don't have anything to sell.
It was really interesting to me, and this is another thing that happened when we weren't recording episodes, but I attended an HP event, and this is probably February or March. And you know how, I mean, any company in that situation, and I'm sure it was the same with Lenovo at Accelerate, they'll sort of hang on to some stuff to announce at the show so that they have some news to break during the conference. And HP introduced some new laptop products during their conference earlier this year. 2 of them, if I remember right, and they were both running on AMD chips. And I mean, I asked about that, and the HP folks went way out of their way to make sure I didn't read too much into that. This is not a reflection of our relationship with Intel or the processor shortage or anything. It's just a timing thing. As it worked out, the new devices we had to announce at the show were both on AMD, but it is interesting the degree to it, for the reason you just cited, all the new and interesting platforms from AMD, the degree to which you're just encountering AMD a lot more from HP and Lenovo and Dell, et cetera, these days.
It's the right solution at the right time. It's like the storm hit with a processor shortage, but I agree. I don't think a lot of this new AMD product that we're seeing is truly a reaction to the shortage. I think in a small part is, and going forward, I think companies are always going to be much more careful to not have all of their systems running hardware from the same vendor. They're going to diversify that out in order to prevent things like this from happening again. But what I'm saying, I don't think that's exactly it. I think AMD has really been coming back as a processor company and is offering really competitively priced parts with good performance. So they're just wanting to make more AMD based systems because AMD processors are getting better, and it's a good, and people want them now.
Yeah, agreed.
So, but it's a good time when companies are not being able to provide enough supply. So it's a good thing all around. Competition is good. Having more supply is good. Less shortages, more money for everybody.
Now, just an interesting sort of side note, and this comes up in the article, and just, timing matters in this kind of a thing. And I remember speaking with some partners at that D&H event when Intel presented, and one guy in particular I interviewed there sells a lot into the K through 12 education space. And I mean, there's a window every year when the hardware acquisitions get done with the K through 12 customers. And he, at that point in time, just wasn't sure if he was going to be able to continue buying from Intel, whether you want to or not. He was thinking there was a pretty reasonable likelihood he was going to be selling a lot of AMD systems just because that was going to be all he was going to be able to get his hands on. So I don't really know at how that kind of netted out and what kind of hit maybe Intel could have taken on its education sales as a result of this, just because of the timing. But it would be interesting to know.
Some of it depends too. Their business, I would say that their processor lines that are more business focused are going to be a little bit more resilient to just massive switches and platforms, because Intel has a lot of technology solutions built into their chips that a lot of resellers and partners and stuff and businesses rely on, like vPro. Mm-hmm. So you can't just instantly just get up and walk away to another company if you're so reliant on a lot of those kind of exclusive technologies that's built into their products. But certainly, if there's any shortages in the consumer line or any business that isn't reliant on any of those things, they could certainly walk away to a different platform pretty quickly. So, it's interesting to see the processor wars coming back.
Yeah. I mean, we're sort of emphasizing the Intel angle on that, but the AMD story in the last few years has been a really impressive one.
Yeah, it sure has. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into the tech pick this week. So That is all of our stories, Rich.
How about that?
Yeah, so if you want to read any of those, there's lots more there that we didn't talk about. There's a bunch more on the who owns who and managed services that we didn't get to. So again, go to the show notes for episode 112, or if you're watching the video on YouTube or another source, there's in the description, we put all the links there so you can kind of follow along with those stories. So that brings us to our museum pick. So I have a museum pick and I have a tech pick. Both of them are completely not related. But I'm getting ready to retire something to the museum that has been in service a very, very, very long time. And this is a consumer device. It is not a pro IT product, but I just so happened to kind of end its useful life to me like today. So it was sitting at my desk. I'm like, I can talk about this. And there's a good funny story there. So my museum pick this week is a GPS product. Now, Rich, do you remember the days when you before your phone had mapping and stuff, you would want to go buy a GPS to put in your car?
Absolutely.
And they still sell them, and for many, many good reasons I'll get to. So I was an early adopter of GPS. It wasn't necessarily the first model year, but I certainly bought one when they were still really, really, really expensive. And I got this guy right here. This is the Garmin Nuvi 660. It was kind of like their second model year of the Nuvi, if I remember correctly. And they had some other GPS products before, but the Nuvi was the first one that was kind of slim and much more compact. The Nuvi 3, the 300 series came out at the same time. It was a square screen. It was a little bit more affordable. This one was a little bit pricier. But these were not cheap back in the day. $500 ish. I think the little square one was $300 and something. This one was originally retailed for, I think, $5.99 or $6.99, if I remember correctly. Yeah, and they did not include map updates. So this was a different time back then. But when I was dropping this in my car, was still well in the time period when people wanted directions. They were going to MapQuest before they left and printing off MapQuest directions on paper and taking it with them. So that I was definitely earlier on the GPS, and this one is 2007, I believe, if I remember correctly. And this has been in service in one of my vehicles, my primary vehicle, for a long time, but then eventually it got moved over to a car that you drove, actually.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is that the one that got me around your neck of the woods in December?
It sure is. This is the exact model that was in that little black car that you drove around when you were up here. And so 12 years of service I got out of this thing. So it lasted a really long time. I think 12 years in the extreme cold and the extreme heat. Now, the battery in this thing has been shot forever. It hasn't worked off the mountain a very, very, very long time, but it still worked until today. I drove that car this morning, yesterday or today, but I noticed that the screen wasn't working right. I was trying to tap stuff, and it wasn't really tapping right. And then this morning, I really tried to make it work, and noticed that when I press here, it was registering down here. And yes, people, I am a technical guy. I did try to recalibrate. I followed the factory directions to get to the recalibration screen and to recalibrate the thing, but that is not working. So it says press dot here. I press dot here and it ignores it. But if I press it here, then it would press the dot here. It's done.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the screen in this bad boy is over. It ain't coming back to life. But it still does power on, so that is enough to meet my requirements to go into the museum. So I will be putting this in the museum, my Nuvi 660, long, 12 years of service GPS, and it was still perfectly, until the other day, it was perfectly usable, perfectly fine. And if the screen would work, it would still be a great navigation device. Even today, even though it doesn't have quite as many features as the new ones. But some people would laugh at me, Rich. Why do you have one of these things when you could just use your phone? And that is a valid point. You can drop your phone on the little thing, load on your mapping program. There's Waze, there's Google Maps, there's a whole bunch of them. But I still run these in my cars, and the primary reason why is because I hate taking my phone out of my pocket and putting it in a mount and getting all that going when this is already there, plugged in, set up, instant on when I turn on the car, easy.
Well,
very easy.
I'll give you a slightly different reason. And I mean, you would have to be a really, really fanatical ChannelPro Weekly listener to remember this story, but I'm sure I've told this story before. And we have certainly, even just in recent weeks, talked about the behind-the-scenes selection process for the ChannelPro All-Star Awards and the debates that go on. Here's why this company should be in or why it shouldn't be in. One year, and in fact, just to tie everything together, this was 3-ish years ago, and I was coming back from that annual August trip with my college friends, and so I was driving to the airport in Sacramento. And I was on the phone with you and our dear and still sorely missed colleague, Cecilia Galvin, and we were hashing out who's going on the list this year. And I had been relying on the GPS on my phone to get me to the airport. And then I dialed into this call. And I don't know if it's a Verizon thing, my phone, whatever, that my phone could not both do your GPS and your call, except I didn't know this. So I'm like intently talking with you guys and making my case for this company or that company. And I go whizzing past the airport because I'm no longer getting instructions telling me where to go. That would be a good reason why you might want a GPS as well as your phone in the car. That is a great
reason. And actually, for a while too, a lot of phones didn't really have the ability to store mapping data locally. So they'd shoot up a lot of data when you were driving around. And that changed with Windows Phone. With Windows Phone, you could actually download the maps, or map sections locally. So I could download Illinois and Wisconsin, and so then at least I wasn't so required to be online. But that feature didn't hit a lot of phones until even just a few years ago. I'm trying to remember exactly when Android supported downloading maps, and it may have been 2 or 3, but it's not like it was 8 years ago by any means. And smartphones have been around a long time. Yeah. So that was another nice reason to get one of these, because if you were in an area where it was poor cell coverage, or if you had a plan, where you only had a gig of data a month or something, these didn't use any data on your cell phone plan. So. Right. So so will I replace this in my what I call my airport car? I don't know, probably not. I just don't drive that car enough, but it was certainly useful for you when you were here.
Yeah.
And because I set it up, so all you had to do is press the go home, and it would take you back to my house, and you could drive around. So there is still a good argument to having a dedicated GPS device, and admittedly, a lot of cars have it built in now too.
Right.
But even when I bought my van, I didn't really want the built-in GPS system, mostly because I'm cheap and because they charge like a ridiculous amount of money for the map updates. Oh, I mean, it was like $1,000 option and like $250 to update the maps every year. It was crazy. I could buy one of these things at Best Buy or online on Amazon for one of the new ones, the Garmin Drive 5-inch. I get it for probably certainly less than $150.
Right.
And that includes lifetime maps and traffic. Which way I'm going to go. So anyway, that's my museum pick. Going to the museum starting today, Nuvi 660. You don't see many of these probably still running around. So I'm just amazed that I had a technology device that worked consistently and reliably and wonderfully for 12 years before both of my children were born, Rich.
Wow.
Now, I'll also say, and here's another good story, since we have a little extra time this week. In order to get this, because like I said, these were crazy, crazy expensive, and I really, really wanted one. Best Buy had a Black Friday deal on this model. And this is one I really wanted. I wanted the wider screen and the traffic that this one had. And they put it on Black Friday special. I want to say for $400 something, $399. It was like way up. Really a really good deal. A really good deal. So this was for this exact product. Is the only time I've ever stood in line overnight on Black Friday. Wow. At a store. My wife and I and her sister in November of 2007 or whatever year, I think November 2007, stood in line, freezing cold overnight in front of Best Buy to get these bad boys. And when people would ask, what are you waiting in line for? I would always say the washing machine, just to make people laugh and look at me like I was an insane person. So yeah, only once. Have you ever stood in line overnight in a store?
No.
Yeah, it's much more enjoyable, I'm sure, in a warmer climate.
Right.
So like if you live in San Diego, it's probably not a big deal. When you live in Northern Illinois, standing in line overnight on a Black Friday generally means the temperature will dip below freezing. Not always, but that particular night, it was under 32 degrees for upper 20s, so not like zero by any means, but it was like upper 20s. It was cold. Where brought big sleeping bags. We're like standing there in big sleeping bags, trying to stay warm. It's very chilly. But it was worth it, and look how long it lasted, Rich. 12 years. That's
the good thing. If you had gone through that for a device that crapped out after a year, it would be a sad story. But yeah, no, you waited in line for something that you got 12 solid years of service from. So
yep, and we bought two. One of them broke a while ago, so this is the last of the two. The other one I think only lasted like 7 years or 8 years, but it's still a long time. Yeah. I mean, it's still a great service life. So anyway, all right, that's my museum pick. We'll move on from reminiscing of times yore. That leads me to my tech pick. Now I normally try to relate the museum pick to the tech pick, like that was then, this is now kind of thing. I am not going to recommend a GPS unit. I think, I was thinking about it. I was looking at some fleet models. I'm like, well, you could maybe wrap these into a service offering because they're internet connected and possibly, but I don't know enough about the fleet connected models to know how they work or whether that's even a moneymaker. So I decided to relate it to something else we were talking about, which is the Intel processor shortage, which naturally led to talking about AMD. AMD recently, I don't want to say announced, they've announced it for a while, but the reviews and stuff, like they just finally launched the 3rd generation Ryzen desktop processors very, very recently. And one of them caught my eye. And not just my eye, the eye of a lot of reviewers. And they released the specs on these months ago, and we've just been waiting for them to finally hit so we can start seeing the benchmarks and all that kind of stuff. And one of them was very, very interesting. An 8-core Ryzen, the Ryzen 7 3700X. An 8-core processor with a 65-watt TDP. Now, most of the 8-core processors are like 95 or 105 watts. So here's this really strange outlier in not only on the Ryzen side, but also on the Intel side with 8 cores, 16 threads, and a really, really low power threshold, a 65 watts. So what that means, Rich, is that it runs at full load and maxes out around 65 watts. As opposed to 105 or whatever for some of these others. So it runs far more efficiently. And it didn't look like it was going to have a lot of the performance setbacks of that. Like it's still running at a high clock. They have some that are still higher too. But this is like, and this thing is going to end up retailing for less than $300 a chip. So in my brain and a lot of the reviewers and those who cover the processor space, we're really thinking AMD is gonna have a home run on their hands with this particular processor, and the benchmarks are finally starting to kind of come out. So I've been reading them. I haven't been able to follow them as much. I don't have any samples or any way to benchmark this particular one right now. But the performance is like in almost lockstep with the Intel i9 9900K, which is a $450 ish processor, which is also 8-core, but I believe that one's 105 watt TDP, but way more expensive. Choose more power, and this thing seems to be benching right alongside it, beating it in some, a little bit less in others, but generally ahead of this more expensive i9 processor. And it sucks less power. That's pretty cool. So that is my tech pick. Is the AMD Ryzen 7 3700X. brand new, and it's really interesting to see AMD climbing up and releasing some really competitive products that are making a lot of people think, I think I'm going to go this route as opposed to the Intel route.
And just so I know, what are some typical use cases for this kind of chip where you're looking for the 8 cores and that kind of power, and then
this is a standard desktop processor in this case. This is their new desktop line. So anything from productivity to gaming, any standard desktop.
Okay.
So nothing. This could be used in any kind of desktop computer. Not workstation. Most likely, but certainly any productivity case or any gaming case if you're a system builder or a gamer.
And less power consumption means longer battery life.
Well, in this case, this is a desktop chip, so it's going to be this is a desktop processor. Now there will be mobile variants. I haven't looked a lot at those yet, but what we're seeing here is that AMD is able to deliver high performance i9 competitive performance at much lower power. And that's pretty interesting, especially as we start looking at their next mobile lines. We're going to start to see AMD in mobile be more powerful and also consume less power.
Right.
So, and a lot of that is thanks to they're moving. AMD got rid of their own fabrication, so they don't fab their own stuff. So they're kind of at the whim of that, but Global Foundries, I believe is who.
I'm trying to come up with it too. I think
it's Global Foundries is who fabs AMD, and they have a 7 nanometer process now. So they've been finally able to catch up with the low scale, and that was one of the things that Intel was really ahead on for a long time. They were doing 12 and 14 nanometer chips, while AMD was still on 32 nanometer chips, and that will make it hotter, slower, all that kind of stuff. But now they're really, fab-wise, they're really getting a lot closer. So we're seeing AMD's design prowess and some of the interesting ways that they're designing their processors really making a difference in terms of power consumption and speed. So definitely a competitor. Very interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. Very interesting stuff. So that's my tech pick. Is the 3700X. Check it out today. You should be able to start ordering them. I think you can order them now. Inventory on these is going to be tight for a while, just because there's a lot of pent up demand for these. And I will tell you, if I was going to build a new desktop tomorrow, Rich, that is probably the processor I would look at.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Because it's cheaper to run, and it doesn't seem to be a huge sacrifice in performance, and it's 8 full cores, 16 full threads for less than $300. That's very, very competitive. And when I was looking at like some i7 and i9 chips, $400, $500, $600, $1,000 chips. And some of them were still certainly higher performance, but we're not talking massive differences here in terms of performance differences. But $800 difference? I don't know about that. I don't know about that, Rich. We'll see. Anyway, that's our tech portion. Rich, if you were going to look to the past, you could tell me what happened. And I've said this before, and if people didn't listen, Rich, you are amazingly accurate at telling us what happened in the past. It's uncanny how close you get to truth every single time. When you predict the future, though, that is not quite as close, but also you're very good. You are the seer of seers, and a lot of what you say comes true. So tell us what has been and what might be to come.
Well, let's start out with what has been, and the place to find that out every week, every Friday, in fact, is our In Case You Missed It post, which was written by ChannelPro's own James Gaskin, and tomorrow's installment. Again, kind of a slowish news week, but he's got some word in there about new small business software from Salesforce. They've got a new CEO at Logarithm, some interesting data. Actually, a number of different research studies came out this week. There was a particularly interesting one from SonicWall. And did you know, Matt, that tomorrow, Friday, July 26th, is System Administrator Day? Right, National System Administrator Day.
I heard something about this. This is a new Hallmark holiday, but I expect lots of gifts, cards, and barbecue.
Well, James will be pointing you to a website that has lots of great gift suggestions, in fact. So, he will share some thoughts about National System Administrators Day. And now, looking ahead next week, of course, I'm on vacation, as we mentioned before, but that will not stop IT Nation Evolve, which used to be known as HTG Peer Groups, from hosting their Q3 meetings in Denver, if I'm not mistaken. And then the week after that, so when we do our next episode of the show, I will either be in or maybe just home from ChannelCon, the big CompTIA show, and I've already got a calendar full of interesting vendor meetings, so there will be lots to talk about from CompTIA ChannelCon a couple of weeks from now.
Awesome. And I know we're still looking to get Dave, Mr. Dave Seibert, back in on a show to talk about Microsoft Inspire and the outcome of a lot of stuff that happened then. Dave's been pretty busy, and we've been pretty busy, but we will get him back on at some point in the near future, and some other surprise guests, I'm sure. I know, Rich, you're always looking for new guests.
Indeed, especially if they're surprise guests.
Yes, putting out the feelers, but don't actually feel the guests. Not all of them like that. I learned that the hard way. I'm kidding. Okay, so if you want to subscribe to ChannelPro Weekly, we have the audio version. You can subscribe on iTunes, Google Play Podcasts. We got an RSS subscription that'll work with pretty much any RSS app on your phone, computer, or tablet. We're on Stitcher. We're pretty much everywhere where podcasts are aggregated. So please subscribe if you're on any of those services. And there's a place to rate it and leave comments. Please leave us a good comment there and a good ratings, and help other people find our little show here. So if you have colleagues, bosses, business folk, business colleagues, pets that are into IT, set them all up with ChannelPro Weekly so they can take part in our show as well. If you want to watch and subscribe to the video version, we do live stream the video version. I will admit we are not the best at getting notification out in advance, primarily because Rich and I are still settling into a rhythm here, and we're not always kind of regular. But if you get subscribe for notifications, which we'll talk about in a second, I believe you get notified if we're going to do a live broadcast. We'll try to get our time out a little bit more in advance, so you have a little bit more notice. You can watch it live while we record. It's a lot of fun. You can type stuff to us in the chat and ask questions and all that fun stuff. And you can also watch it on demand on YouTube after the fact. Probably some other video services in the future, but right now we're just focusing on the big one. So if you want to watch the ChannelPro Weekly show, you can subscribe. You hit the subscribe button. If you're watching right now, you see it right there, the subscribe button. You hit that, but you got to hit a bell too, because Google likes to two-factor everything. It's like two-factor authentication. Subscribe bell equals what you would think subscribe does. So do both of those things, and then you will get notified when we have new shows out on YouTube for you to watch. They make it so complicated, Rich.
And of course, we're switching platforms in a few weeks anyway. But
well, we'll probably still be on YouTube, but we're going to try out whatever other tool they offer. So it's just whether or not we'll be able to continue to do it live, I don't know. So there's a lot of questions there. I'm sure we'll figure it out, and give us a couple weeks. We'll figure out our new thing, folks, and hopefully still be doing it live and having our video show up on YouTube for you to watch. ChannelProNetwork.com is the website. We talked about it earlier. Make sure you bookmark that. Lots of great stuff there each and every single day. We are on the social medias, as we alluded to. We're ChannelPro Network on Facebook, at ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. If you want to follow me, I am at Matt Whitlock. Rich, you are? At Rich Free. And that doesn't mean that he doesn't cost anything. It just means that it's the first four letters of his last name. FYI. As I was confused, I thought I could just take you home and you'd be free, but you're not. And you're never free because you're very, very busy. So if we're talking about scheduling, that definitely doesn't describe you. But it's just you're your last name. Very clever, Rich. Very, very clever. Mine was very obvious. It's just my name. So
It was still out there, though. That's good.
it was still out there. Yes. So follow us on the socials there, and we will be back in a couple weeks with more ChannelPro weekly goodness for you. Thank you all for watching and or listening. Have a great day.